Fresno State conducts an outcome survey, and this is now our third year. We collect a survey for people that are graduating in August, December, and in May. We combine that together, and then 1 year later, we look at the data. We collect the data when students graduate. We collect it when 3 months are up, at 6 months, and at 12 months. And you can see that we now have the 3-month data for the May 2020 grads, and I looked at a comparison for the May 2019 grads. So last year, around this time, 37.7% of our new graduates had full-time employment, whereas this year we're at 33%. So it is lower. It isn't significant, but it is lower. The other number to really look at in this chart is the unemployed and seeking. A year ago at the 3-month mark, the May 2019 grads, 16% were still unemployed and looking, whereas this year the number is 23%. So we do know that COVID-19 and the unemployment rate has had an impact on our brand new grads. So we know that they're still looking, and we'll continue to track that. We'll look at that at 6 months. We'll look at it again at 12 months to see if, with some COVID recovery, hopefully with a vaccine, more employment going up, that we'll be able to see those numbers increase. Mary, do we have any questions yet from the audience?
Excuse me, not at this time.
Okay, great. Okay, so not at this time. There are no questions. So Damien, can we go back to your screen share on the slides? Great. The next slide, please. All right, so when we talk about job loss, it's difficult to look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and even EDD because it lags. So a lot of times, Damien, especially in his role and also in my role as well, we look at other sources for data. And the place that we look at sources for data are job posting sites. And at the end of the slides, we're going to share with you what all of those are. Damien really loves looking at LinkedIn. He looks for a lot of jobs on LinkedIn. I use Glassdoor a lot. I also use some market analysis trends that are done by Burning Glass and Strata, and also by EMSI. Those are real-time job market analysis that are done based on job openings. So this one, I believe, was from Glassdoor. Unfortunately, they didn't do it for Fresno County, but I wanted you to see that they did pull for Los Angeles and for San Francisco, and I didn't pull for all industries because that would take a whole hour of our time up. But I wanted to look at Los Angeles and San Francisco, because a lot of times in our office, we really encourage students to cast a wider net geographically as they look for jobs after they graduate. And I wanted to just show you these slides because of the shocking numbers of job loss. So the number of open jobs right now versus where they were a year ago. Look at entertainment and look at media and publishing. Arts and entertainment down 67% in San Francisco, as well as Los Angeles. And then another one that's been hit super hard that impacts when students are looking for jobs. Look at travel and tourism in San Francisco is down 78% of job postings. And travel and tourism in LA is also down 72%. So significant. Damien, can you go to the next slide? Healthcare. I think a lot of people think, well, we'll just go into healthcare. We're safe in healthcare, right? Not necessarily so. And a lot of this has to do with COVID. So a lot of the resources were diverted to ERs and ICUs. A lot of surgery suites were converted over into ICUs, specifically for COVID patients. A lot of elective surgery. Medicare recently reported how few people had hip and joint replacements done this spring because of COVID, and the inability to get in to have elective surgeries done. And so we even see year-over-year job loss in San Francisco and LA, even in hospitals. Biotech wasn't hit as hard because they're doing some of the COVID testing, but certainly healthcare has been impacted as well. There is one ray of enlightenment. Damien, if you could go to the next slide, and that's technology. But isn't this interesting? Look at information technology in the LA area. How many jobs were posted this year? So YOY stands for year over year. There was a 59% decrease, but look at internet and technology for San Francisco, which went up 136.8%. So anybody out there listening in computer engineering and mathematics and data analytics and information systems, you'll want to make sure that you look in the San Francisco area, and we relate that to the high-tech companies that operate there. Zoom, which we're on today, operates out of San Francisco. Facebook, Google, Apple. The list is huge on all the companies in the Bay Area that are hiring right now. So Mary, it looks like there's a question.
And Damien, perhaps you can answer. The question is, are you going to talk about scientists who are not in healthcare?
Yeah,
and I can't hear, so Damien will answer, correct?
Yes, definitely we will touch on scientists and different industries that are scientists related and where scientists could look for jobs. So we'll cover that definitely a little bit later.
Okay, Mary, were there any other questions? Is that it? Okay, awesome. I'm living on nonverbal communications here. I can be heard, but I can't hear anybody. So I am watching a lot of facial expressions right now, which is really fun. So Damien, could you forward to the next slide? So what does this mean for Fresno County? So here I'm relying on EDD data, which realize lags a little bit, although I do get fresh data monthly from EDD for Madera and for Fresno County. So this is hot off the press. Literally, this just came out. So I've bolded areas where there are jobs. Everything else is in the negative territory. Again, you want to look at, especially at accommodation, food services, drinking places. Those numbers are down significantly, which really hurts our students, because a lot of times, not only are they looking for jobs after they graduate, but those are the jobs that they do part-time while they're in college. So that's really had an impact on our students. So we do see some very positive numbers. General merchandising, of course, Walmart, Target, they're doing very well in this market. There's a little bit of an uptick in real estate and rental. Ambulatory care, which is non-hospital, which can still do some procedures that aren't impacted by COVID. Federal government, of course, because of COVID. I'm going to talk a little bit about new hiring for contact tracing, which is impacting federal government hiring. And then local government education is up as well. I'm going to give Damien the floor for a minute here. Damien, you look for jobs every day and post them on Hire Fresno State. Do you want to let our participants know where you're really seeing some job increases in our local area?
Yeah, sure. I think definitely because of our geographical location, I see a lot of positions in the ag industry. And that's for across the board for all different majors, and not just ag majors, but even for scientists. I think someone mentioned they're looking for scientist positions. There are a lot of labs that are hiring. And also I'm seeing a lot of logistics in the logistics industry, transportation, warehousing, with trucking, with transportation, something that has to do with that. Another thing I'm seeing a lot is sales, definitely sales and management trainees, especially for those looking for entry-level positions. And that's across the board for all different kinds of industry, not just retail sales, but all sorts of different sales. And then I see a lot of government. They're still hiring a lot, and we'll touch on that a little bit later too. So there are definitely still jobs that are out there. And I think one thing to note that I can add is that as we see these industries, they are not hiring. Like, so for example, we were talking about nursing. They're not, there's a negative in terms of year-on-year hiring, but then they are also still hiring at the same time. So that's actually true for many different industries. So they're laying off, yes, but then also they're hiring at the same time, just maybe in different divisions for different positions for different roles. So, yeah.
Okay, I got a quick question for you all. Can somebody explain why federal jobs are up but state jobs are down? Do you think this will change?
I think that's kind of difficult to say. With California, I think there's definitely because of budget constraints, with the state budget being in deficit because of the COVID crisis. So we are definitely seeing less state jobs that are but then in federal jobs, you know, we definitely see a steady stream, not necessarily increase or whatever, but at least on the local level. I think that will definitely change once we get out of this COVID situation.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you, Damien. So that, I think there was a question about federal versus state, and unfortunately I didn't get to hear Damien. It is an election year, and that a lot of times will depend on federal versus state jobs as well. I don't know if he said that or not. Unfortunately, I can't hear. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. I'm going to continue on. So Damien, next slide. So that's the immediate future. That's what EDD is showing for local, and also what we're kind of seeing on job postings that we're seeing. The question becomes, if really there is a vaccine in the near future, whether it's this December or next January or next June, whatever that may be, Burning Glass is predicting that as a result of COVID, we will see some new industries really pop forward and be strong. And I think if you're a graduating senior listening to this webinar, whether you're 2021 or 2022, these are going to be some key indicators of where you should be looking for jobs in different industries. So we know that we're going to become a readiness society or an economy. What we learned from COVID is we were not prepared. We were short on PPE, we're short on pharmaceuticals, hospital beds, ventilators. We didn't have the manufacturing capacity to get up to speed on quickly producing millions and millions of masks that we've needed. So there'll be this readiness economy. Cybersecurity has become super important because of the protection of data. So industries to look out for would be healthcare, infrastructure, cybersecurity, environmental technology, and even insurance is growing. There is a growing need for insurance agents. The remote economy, we're all doing it. Here we are, Zooming from homes and offices and schools, and we're remote in a lot of places we never were before. So data and software dependence, and that isn't just for tech people. We're gonna talk about that in a bit in the skill set that will really need powering forward. A more diversified economy, certainly in people, but also in looking at our manufacturing and our logistics and supply chains. And should we bring things back into our country when there are things like pandemics or viruses or things that impact us on a large scale across the whole country? Relooking at advanced manufacturing, logistics expertise. So, and the automated economy, which I'm going to talk about in a bit as well. Automation is driving up everything. Artificial intelligence will change the scope of the way we work. So I wanted to give you two quick examples that we noticed in our office here at the Career Center at Fresno State. Is we started noticing an uptick, not so much in Fresno County, but in the state of California, for contact tracers. And contact tracers are people who work for public health, but they understand the nature of human beings and can help interview people to determine where the possible the spread of COVID might go once you've been in contact with someone who's had COVID or have been in contact with people when you acquire COVID. So it's kind of like detective work. And it isn't just hiring, yes, public health, but you could also be hired as a contact tracer if you have a psychology background, a sociology background, some of the social sciences, Some of the communications and marketing backgrounds do well with contact tracing. Kind of a no-brainer is to Zoom support. I'm having problems with Zoom today with sound. I need Zoom support. So we know that that has become a brand new job that we probably haven't seen in a long time. Even with Zoom, it really brought it to the front. And then another thing, we're actually getting a lot of phone calls, and I believe the Cremens colleges as well. We're getting requests for tutoring that's done as a pod. So parents in a neighborhood are banding together, and because they're homeschooling or online schooling their children, they want tutors to help with mathematics and reading and foreign language. And they want to hire a tutor for a neighborhood of children or a pod of children. And so we've seen some of these brand new jobs pop up as a result of COVID. And we would assume, based on Burning Glass's prediction, that we're going to see a lot more of careers, or at least jobs that haven't existed in the past, that are all of a sudden going to pop up. And hopefully we'll become aware of those in the Career Center and get those on Hire Fresno State, as we have with some of these jobs. Damien, next slide. So where are we headed? We're going to kind of zoom out here and go back to the national level. And we're going to look at the predictions for jobs from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which we rely on a lot. And remember, don't forget, this is the prediction for 2018 to 28. So we still have 8 more years into this. No surprise, nurses are way up there. What I happen to pull in this chart is only jobs that require bachelor's degrees. A lot of my a lot of the data that I'm providing today in the presentation is focused on bachelor's degrees, not so much master's and at the doctorate level, but these are not high school level jobs. These are not associate degree jobs. These actually require a bachelor's degree. So the prediction is within the 10 years from 2018 to 28, they predict the United States will need over 372,000 registered nurses, 241,000 software developers. Look at market research analysts made the list, management analysts, big data, data analytics, mathematics, analytical modeling is all going to be big. Finance managers, baby boomers, I'm one of them. Baby boomers, we're aging. And as we age, we're not only looking for personal care assistance in healthcare, but managing our assets and helping us manage those assets as we live longer and longer. One thing I want to just call your attention to is at the bottom, just for fun, I threw in personal care aides. That does not require a bachelor's degree, but look at the need over the next 10 years. Well, we'll need 372,000 nurses with bachelor's degrees. We're going to need 880,000 personal care aides, which is almost 1 million new jobs related to the caring of the elderly. Mary, looks like there's a question for Damien.
Yes, there's a couple of questions. One being, are the jobs that were listed here top jobs, or did we just select those for illustration purposes?
You know what, Damien, Mary typed me the question. I can answer that question. I chose top jobs with the greatest numbers that required a bachelor's degree for this slide. Was that the question, Mary? Yes, she's nodding her head, yes. Okay, Damien, next slide.
I did have another question. What are some of the scams you've seen in employment recruiting at this time?
I'm not seeing a next slide. Oh, another question, okay.
Yeah, so what are some of the scams you've seen in employment recruitment at this time? What are some tips for students of things to look out for and avoid?
I think I've seen some that are especially advertising for something like an executive assistant. But scams, they could be across the board for all different kinds of industries. I think the one advice I would give students is never, ever give out your personal information. And if you interview for a job over the phone or online, and then they ask you for your bank account number so they can deposit some money into your account, never do that. And we've seen some that ask for, you buy an iPhone and then we'll pay you back. Send us the iPhone and we'll install some software that you will need. So just make sure you never ever do anything like that. So anytime you apply for a job, especially you don't actually meet the people, everything is done over the phone, and then they ask for your personal information, or they ask you to buy something, they'll reimburse you. Those are definitely no-no, so just be aware of that.
A couple other thoughts, if you don't mind me chiming in.
Yeah.
Always go to the company's website to confirm that there is an actual position. Sometimes they'll be sneaky and have an email address that's slightly off. So always go to the company's website. Also Google name of company job scam and see if anybody else is reporting that this is a scam. If it's too good to be true, as they say, it probably is.
And I think this is even a good time to just really quickly advertise our Career Cafe, virtual Career Cafe. It's something that you can drop in on Zoom and just even quickly ask one of the career peer mentors, can you look at this job posting and that I'm applying for? This kind of seems like a scam to me. And they're experts at spotting these because they help us post a lot of the jobs. So just a plug up there for our virtual cafe. I think for the sake of time, we'll go on for Debbie. We keep going on.
Okay, I think I'm back now, right, Damien? Yep, sorry, I'm at the university in my office and somebody is doing something outside with a weed whipper, so sorry about that. Okay, Indeed.com, another place that we look for jobs. Here's a slide showing the most in-demand, high-paying jobs that require a bachelor's degree. And again, I picked the highest numbers with the bachelor's degree. So again, RNs, 15,663 jobs per million. Is what they're seeing. Sales reps, managers, insurance agents, again, med-surg, ICU goes back to nursing, real estate, physical therapists, engineers, software developers, all requiring bachelor's degrees. So I think that gives a lot of hope to people with bachelor's degrees to show how positive job outlook is for a lot of our majors at Fresno State. Okay, Damien, next slide. So what is the future going to hold? BLS, what the future holds for the fastest growing. So we can look at jobs by how many there are in sheer volume versus what's going to grow the fastest. And again, now this one, I picked percentages. For example, solar panel installers, 63% growth. That was pretty high on the list. So what I did on this list, I took the highest percentages and then cut off at 23%. But the ones that are in bold require a bachelor's degree. So information security, physician assistants, statisticians, nurse practitioners, speech language pathologists, genetic counselors, mathematicians, operations research analysts, software developers, health specialty teachers, post-secondary. So it's showing you salary levels along with growth rate. However, these are not Fresno County. This is throughout the entire United States. And regionally, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a growth rate of mathematicians at 26% in Fresno County. So be careful how you interpret this. Damien, could you show the next slide, please? So a point I wanted to make, another thing that we gather on the outcome survey of our graduating students is where they go after they graduate, where do they actually find employment? And I don't have the data yet for the 2019-20 because we wait until one full year to get a cycle of that outcome survey to get the full 12 months. So it is interesting when we ask new grads, where are you looking for jobs when you look for jobs? You can see on the left, a lot of people stay near their hometown, especially Kremen, which is teaching, because there's an abundance of jobs locally for teaching, all the way down to the lowest, which is Lyles, which is about 56% for engineering, which probably makes a lot of sense because engineering does have a lot of international students, and also a lot of the jobs in the technology and engineering sector are up north or down south as well. We also asked if you're staying near your alma mater. So when you combine those together, you can see a pretty high percentage of our students after they graduate stay either in the Fresno region or near Fresno State. So we know that a lot of our incoming freshmen and transfers are from the 5-county area, and our president often says 80 to 85% of our students stay local after they graduate, and that's true. So it is really important to look at this data at the regional level and not just at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because you're looking at national data. Okay, next slide, Damien. So what has the highest growth rates in Fresno County that require a bachelor's degree? So here again, this is growth rate. This is from EDD. This is for Fresno County. So the highest that we're predicting, 40% growth rate is projected for physician's assistants, 35% nurse practitioners. We need software developers, mathematical and operations research analysts. I was kind of surprised to see airline pilots on there, especially now here again, lagging of data. United announced today thousands of layoffs are coming because that sector has not recovered. So that number may actually change in the near future. Information security analysts and so on down the line. Again, what I see is a lot of our majors at Fresno State from all of our 8 colleges, which is really, really positive. Damien, next slide, please. I do want to warn you about something. When you look at just growth rates and not numbers of openings, you've got to interpret the data the right way. So let's just look at registered nurses. Their growth rate is 12.8%. The number of openings in the next 10 years will be 920, which means 92 openings per year. If I look at biological science, their increase is higher, but the projected numbers of openings for Fresno County is 10 over 10 years, which means 1 biological scientist is the projection for new hires per year in Fresno County. Now, that's not saying biology majors can't get jobs in other places, but specifically, Fresno County is probably not the best place to look for biological scientist jobs. Software development is better, accountants, elementary teachers, even general operations managers. Although the caveat with there is some of these that require a bachelor's degree also require 3 to 5 years of experience. So from what I looked at in the data you want to go to the next slide, Damien? So some of these jobs do require some experience, but just quickly, with the highest numbers of opening in Fresno County, if you literally go through this list, and again, these are for bachelor's degrees, registered nurses, management, teachers, accountants, social workers, financial managers, construction managers, human resources, adult, basic and secondary education. Next slide, Damien, it continues. Loan officers. Okay, chief executives are there, notice. That's not a bachelor's degree with no experience. That's not an entry-level position. So you got to kind of be careful. An ag inspector, that could be an entry-level position. Kindergarten teachers, special ed teachers, social workers, environmental science, graphic designers, interpreters. You can look at this, you can get a copy of our deck of slides at the end. We'll give you our email to really dig through this data. But realize if we looked at every major within the 8 colleges, you're gonna see pieces of them in every single one of these slides, which is very positive for a job outlook for Fresno County. It's just the volume isn't necessarily there, which forces some of our students to look in other locations as well. Okay, Damien, next slide. So just one caveat. Again. So EDD is projecting, along with BLS, 526,200 new jobs will be projected for Fresno County. Of those, 11% are for bachelor's degrees. So 58,150 divided by 10 years, that means 5,815 jobs per year at the bachelor's degree level. So you have to keep that in mind when you look at that. We may not have enough jobs for all brand new grads coming out every May, and thus some looking geographically in other locations is important. Okay, I'm gonna move on now to, I think, Damien, this is your piece. Damien's gonna talk about some emerging careers that you will not find in EDD, you will not find in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This actually comes from Pearson, and these are kind of some new exciting jobs on the horizon.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Debbie, for sharing all that data. So yeah, one thing to think about is that a lot of these data comes from the EDD and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and a lot of times those don't have the most updated, the most current jobs, because they look at the data from the last 10 years and then they use that, based on that, to project out for what will be available. So new jobs that are coming up maybe won't be in that data. And another thing that I want to talk about before we go on to these specific ones is that for a lot of our students, what we want to try and do for part of this presentation is to get students away from thinking that I have a specific major, that means I have a specific job for me lined up in the future. Yes, for some, maybe that makes sense. If you are in a education major, you're going to be a teacher. So that makes sense. If you are an engineer, you will get a job in civil engineering or whatever. Yes, there's a direct correlation to your major. But for many majors, you can do a lot of different things, not just like, for example, for a history major, you're not going to be a historian. There aren't going to be enough historian positions out there for all of the history majors. So we want to try and get students away from thinking that, and kind of broaden their horizon and think more in terms of, okay, so what kind of industries, what kind of skills are these different places looking for? So according to a research paper that we have looked at from Pearson, there are 6 different emerging industries that have new and exciting positions. So for esports, wine and beer, online education, cybersecurity, social media, environmental science are some of the fields that they have identified as the up and coming industries. So we move on, we'll just kind of look at some of these one-on-one. So for wine and beer, that's actually not necessarily an emerging career for us in the Valley. We are one of the few schools that have actually a viticulture and enology programs. So, you know, this is not necessarily new, but the wine and beer industry is definitely becoming an up and coming industry, because there are a lot more focus on microbreweries and different things like that. So it's part of a cultural shift. And there are a lot of new technology that is being developed and coming out of this industry. So look at some of the technical skills that they're looking for. They're looking for business, they're looking for laboratory skills, they're looking for engineering, chemistry. And so across the board, there are a lot of different majors that could be working in this industry. So there's biology and there's chemistry. There's marketing. You know, all these new, smaller wineries that are coming up, they need people to market. They need people to do sales. They need graphic designers to design their promotional materials, design their bottle labels. They need mechanical engineering to design their equipment, to specialize their equipment. So, so if you are thinking like, you know, you are a mechanical engineer, I can only work to become a so-and-so kind of engineer. Yes, that's true, but there's actually different industries that you could be looking for work, for jobs as well. And something that we want to highlight too is each of these industries, they're looking for soft skills. They're looking for these human skills that is important across the board. So be thinking of that when you, especially for students, you know, for you, these are some skills that you need to develop while you are here at Fresno State. It's not about just your major, just your classes, but you know, how to do research, work ethic, social perceptiveness, all of these things are across the board for all majors, applicable for all majors. We'll look at another industry. We'll look at esports. So that is definitely an upcoming industry. Fresno State, for the first time this past year, has an esports team. You know, the technical skills that they're looking for gaming expertise, information technology, data analysis, et cetera, et cetera. So what kind of majors could be looking for jobs in esports? Math, statistics, computer engineering. There's also computer science, and then definitely business, all sorts of business. There is, you can even think about journalism. For all other sports, they have sports journalists. For esports, there needs to be journalists as well. For event planning, rec administration, that's also something that even that major could think about. Another industry we can look at, social media. Everybody knows about social media, but you know, all sorts of different you know, majors could apply, even sociology, psychology, English, because look at the technical skills that are required. They require writing. There needs to be content managers, people who write the content creators. So people who are in history, in anthropology, you know, those are majors that could work in these different industries. Yeah, so let's look at maybe one more. We'll do cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is definitely something that is up and coming also. So other than just the obvious computer engineering, engineering and computer science, even forensic behavioral sciences majors, sociology, psychology, and then again, math and statistics, because there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of data analysis that goes on. So these are just some of the ones that we'll highlight for today for the sake of time. And I'll bring it back, give it back to Debbie.
Great, thank you, Damien. So as Damien went over with the 5 emerging careers, you'll notice there was a skill set on each of those slides. Burning Glass recently, you can go ahead to the next slide. Burning Glass recently looked at millions of job openings, current, and predicted out that the kinds of skills that new grads are going to need going forward kind of fall into 4 categories. I think in years past, career development really pushed what we call developing a T-shaped career, develop technical skills and develop human skills. And society and technology has kind of evolved to where we kind of divide that out. And when they looked at the jobs, they found that human skills were critical. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that with robots moving into the future. Certainly skills our students are learning at Fresno State: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, analytical, creativity. We know that students in the liberal arts, in engineering, business, mathematics, you certainly are getting the critical thinking, analytical skills. There's creativity sprinkled in there, which is really, really great for our students today, which will prepare them for the future market. But what they're also noticing is, even though you may not be in business, it doesn't hurt to throw a little bit of business enabling in there. So being able to communicate data, project management is needed in all kinds of jobs today, as well as we all need data analytics because of digitation, software development, some basic programming skills, digital security and privacy. So students today that are graduating will need digital building blocks. They'll need to be business enablers, and they'll also need to have human skills as well. So Damien, next slide. So Burning Glass went so far in a recent study, a white paper that they wrote that said, if students today graduating, that would be you May 2020 grads if you're out there, if you're graduating and you're a non-technical degree, you're not science, you're not engineering, but you kind of wanted to get into those fields, if you added some of these skills right now to your resume, whether it be graphic design, some basic computer programming, marketing, sales, social media, data analytics, you would double your chances of getting a job. I'm going to give you an example. We have a Fresno State alum who I met by accident. I went on a tour in Reno, Nevada to the Tesla plant where batteries are made for Tesla cars. They employ over 12,000 people at the plant, and they had an alum panel. And on that alum panel were 2 Fresno State alums. They had various universities working for Tesla on this panel. One panelist was an ag business major from Fresno State, and the other was a photojournalism major from the College of Arts and Humanities, who actually was working on team building within the Human Resources Management Department. So I want you to think about that. You could be in the social sciences, you could be in arts and humanities, you could be in psychology, sociology, philosophy, women's studies, any of those that might be non-technical. If you could add on to that. Burning Glass is also saying you don't necessarily have to double major in college or even minor. You can pick up certificates through lynda.com, which you can get through the Fresno Public Library now for free with a Fresno State ID. There are places that you can pick up certificates and licenses to add on to your degree to make you even more marketable. So just some food for thought for those of you that are graduating. So I only have a couple of minutes left. What does the future hold? Let's see Flippy. So 10 years and beyond, what are we looking at? If you haven't heard of Flippy, Flippy now works for White Castle Burgers, and Flippy flips burgers so that humans don't have to do that. And so Flippy actually exists. You can actually invest in Flippy. And this is a robot that is doing the work of what a human would do, which lays off people that work part-time, but also creates new jobs in technology and engineering as well. So next slide. So I read a very futuristic paper, and the white paper was on 42 jobs of the future. And I want you to just kind of read over these. Some of them are pretty interesting. Walker talker, what's a walker talker? A walker talker is someone who helps the elderly kind of in a social role so that they have friends when they become socially lonely. Data detectives, AI assisted healthcare technicians, alternative energy engineers, earthquake forecasters, those could be pretty important for us in the state of California, waste engineers in the greening of the environment, digital tailors, you might be fashion merchandising, so you will custom measure a person's body type online and create clothing to fit them. A virtual store Sherpa, we can shop online, there'll be storefronts, but we might need somebody to show us around the storefront and help us purchase things. Data trash engineer, esports arenas. Damien talked about the emerging career of esports, and that will create new careers. If you're in ag, we haven't talked much about ag. We're going to need food to feed the world. Instead of growing out, we're going to grow up. There'll be a need for vertical farm consultants. Flying car instructors for all our flying cars that we'll see someday. Security repair persons as well, because our personal security is getting hacked on a regular basis. So it looks like Mary has a question for Damien.
Yes, the question is about certificates, some of this added value technical skill that you can develop. Where do you get those?
I think there are a lot of different places you can get certificates. Debbie mentioned lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning. You can actually access that with a local library card. And there are a lot of different online programs on there that you can take for free, and it will give you some certification or at least some proof that you have skills in that area. So it really depends on what kind of certification you're looking for and in what industry. Sometimes it might require a few classes. So it really just depends on what it is that you're looking for.
Thank you, Damien. A question, which actually I could answer, is most jobs that require a bachelor's degree also require a couple of years of experience. As a senior, I'm seeking advice as to what my options are. And she's also getting her certificate in drug and alcohol studies. I'll quickly answer that internships are important regardless of what your academic field is. And if you need help, I happen to be the person that can help you identify internship opportunities. Also, you will find a lot of positions that do want 2 to 3 years of experience. However, do not let that slow you down. Again, if you've done relevant experience through your coursework, volunteer service, include that. I've had several students get positions that required 3 years of experience, even though they didn't get paid for any of it. Damon, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's great. Yeah. So a lot of times they say experience, but just making sure that you become a well-rounded college student, not just focus on your school, but make sure you're getting experience with hands-on experience with different aspects of different industries that you're looking interested in.
Thank you, Damien, Mary, for answering those questions. So last slide. Awesome. So kind of parting words for especially students. Faculty might be listening as well. And we know that faculty members, often students go to you for career advice. Studies show that a student will go to a faculty member for career advice before they actually visit a career center. So I'm really happy that faculty joined us today. The good news is that human skills will be critical to the future. Bachelor's degrees will be critical to the future. Yes, there will be robots. Yes, there will be artificial intelligence. The workplace will look very different. But human skills will be critical for everything that we do. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, emotional intelligence, decision-making, judgment, negotiation, cognitive flexibility. Those are all skills you're learning in college. And it's good sometimes to stop and think about some examples of those type, like how did you learn, or what did you do in college that showed creativity? That these are the kinds of questions that employers often ask in a job interview. And students, you want to be prepared that you can actually give examples of a time you had to have a judgment or you negotiated something. These will be critical skills that, despite what robots can do and all the mathematical modeling we want to do, there isn't still the human, the emotional side of what we can provide. So I want to leave you with kind of one thing that I learned this week that was shocking. I listened to a podcast the other night on skills that will be needed in the future. And they started the podcast by saying, as of today, the first person in the world who will live to be 150 years old has already been born, and they may have a career of 80 to 90 years. Wow. That makes my mind just blow up. That's all. I can't even wrap my head around that. I can't imagine working for 80 years. And how many careers will an individual have in those 80 years? So human skills will be needed 80 years from now. So we hope you're going to be resilient, and we hope that you visit us. You want to go to the next slide, Damien? So there's Damien and I's email, Debbie Y and D Lay, and we're happy to send you these slides. This webinar was recorded today. On our Fresno State webpage for the Career Center, we have a YouTube icon. You can click that on and you can watch this webinar that's been recorded or others. This slide is showing you sources that I went to today. And also, if you want to read or hear or see more, there's some really good articles that I've included here that I used in today's presentation, a podcast on Are We Robot Ready? And helping students prepare and navigate for the transformed job market by the American Council of Education was excellent, and that's the last link as well. So you can go to the next slide, Damien, and I'm going to let Damien wrap up and tell you about upcoming events. Super thrilled you were here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Just to highlight some of the events, these are all virtual events that we will be having. And we've been doing some alum panels. And we will have two of them on September 16th and also September 29th, highlighting different career pathways. And basically, we're inviting recent alum who have graduated from Fresno State who are working in these different industries, and they will just be there to answer questions, share their experience, share their stories, and kind of tell us what they did in order to get into these different industries and working in these different industries. And we will also have our job fairs in October, and instead of having one big in-person job fair, we will have 3 separate virtual fairs. And students are invited to attend all 3. You can attend all 3 regardless of what majors you are, and you can make sure to meet different employers, ask questions, and see what you need to do in order to be able to get a job when you graduate. So keep an eye out on our website and also our social media accounts, and we will be posting more information about all of these events on there as well. So that's it for today. If you guys have any questions, we'll be around for a couple more minutes, and we can answer your questions.
All right, Damien, for the sake of time, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for the day.